What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. This is the first video that I'm putting out after my hiatus in an attempt to sort of reinvigorate my channel. So I thought that my first video back should be about my favorite subject to talk about ever in the entire universe, and my friends can attest to this, and that is World of Warcraft lore. Now, millions of people play this game, and I would say it would not be a stretch of the imagination to say that well over 50% of the entire world have at least heard about it. But comparatively, almost no one knows the actual storylines behind the world's most popular MMORPG. LOL, IRL, BRB. So let's talk lore. Like most creation stories, it starts out with the words, "In the beginning, there was nothing but just darkness." This darkness was creatively called the Great Dark Beyond, or GDB. Now, the GDB was special from most creation stories because it consists of two separate dimensions that we know of. There was the material realm, where most physical things exist and our story takes place. But there is also the twisting nether, which is a dimension of just pure magic and energy, and is way too complicated to explain right now, and we'll get to it later. Enter the Pantheon, a group of extremely powerful creatures known as Titans, that, as we understand it, are responsible for the creation of every living being known in existence. Now, to date, it's not actually known how many worlds the Titans created. However, there's only 5 in the game that are actually known and have names. There is Ka'aresh, Zoroth, Argus, Draenor, and Azeroth. Each world obviously has their own natural denizens, but the one we want to focus on right now is Azeroth. That's where our story actually takes place. So after the Titans were done creating all the known universe and spreading joy and cheer like celestial Santa Clauses, they decided, as they usually do, to just kind of let their creations be and like live out their own lives, laissez-faire kind of deities. But then in comes a new group of all-powerful beings known as the Old Gods. And the Old Gods were basically, they just kind of wanted to mess everything up for everybody. Sort of the IRS of creation stories. So what with the Titans being gone and the planet being mostly defenseless other than the few mortal creatures that the Titans had put there, the Old Gods really had no opposition when they were just wrecking shit. First, they all had their own armies. Every Old God had their own army of minions that just kind of gross and ugh. Secondly, they decided to attack the very elements of Azeroth. Their presence alone was buckling the foundations of the entire world and just wreaking havoc with the elements. But on top of that, they decided to create 4 powerful beings purely made up of the elements to cause even more havoc. They were the lords of water, earth, fire, and air, or Neptulon, the Tide Hunter, Therazane, the Earth Mother, Ragnaros, the Fire Lord, and Alakir, the Wind Lord, respectively. Thirdly, the Old Gods cast what is called the Curse of Flesh onto Azeroth. Now, the original denizens of Azeroth were not human or dwarf or anything like that. They were beings made of pure earth and metal. And the closest comparison that we really have are the earthen, which are basically dwarves made out of rock. Like, they're exactly what they sound. Now, the Curse of Flesh, too, is exactly what it sounds. It turned all the denizens of Azeroth into beings of flesh and bone. The dwarves, the gnomes, the Vrykul, and any other flesh representation of the original metallic or earthen creations that the Titans had originally put there. Elves and humans, you might have noticed, were not part of that group. They're different. Elves were believed to evolve from trolls that were exposed to high amounts of energy from what's called the Well of Eternity that we'll definitely get to later. And humans are strange. They are believed to have evolved from elves, but not for a very, very long time afterwards. So after the Old Gods cast the Curse of Flesh, Azeroth is in ruins. Most of its population are dead or alive, depending on how you think of it. The Titans come back to see that their world is under attack, and they're a little bit miffed. And thus begins one of not one of the biggest war in Azeroth's entire history. It's basically gods fighting gods. Um, the Titans are known as demigods. They're not actually gods, but they're very, very powerful. They rival the old gods in power. It's just it's just technicalities. So the Titans and the old gods are battling it out, and it's this massive war that's just shaking the skies and causing earthquakes and volcanoes and fissures and all this, and it's devastating. After it all, the Titans end up victorious, and they either kill or imprison all of the old gods remaining. When they look down onto Azeroth, they see the curse of flesh. They see their beautiful, perfect creations are tainted. They're not as let's be honest, they're not as good as they used to be. They're weaker. They have to eat and all this stuff. When they try to remove the curse of flesh, they notice that the old god's taint is just so deep into the roots of the world that by removing the curse of flesh, they would literally be dismantling the entire planet. And the same goes with all the creatures that are infested with it too. Instead of killing the old gods, which would tear apart the foundations of the world, they imprison them inside Azeroth. And now there are only 4 old gods that are actually named so far. And depending on who you ask, what sources you ask, there are any number of old gods left. My research has told me that there are 4 named gods, only one of them even still remaining alive. The first was Yisharj, I think is how you pronounce it. Um, he was the old god of corruption. He fell during the original battle between the Titans and the old gods. And as he was dying, his heart was buried deep in Pandaria, which was one of the newest expansions, um, and is the cause for most of the conflict in that. So even after he is dead, he's still causing problems. Then there is N'Zoth. Now, not much is known about N'Zoth, other than he is the old god of nightmares. He is believed to be the one who drives Deathwing insane, who is the main antagonist of the Cataclysm expansion. But he was long before any of that. Don't worry, we'll get there. There's also Cthulhu, who was the main bad guy of the Gates of Ankaraj world event. That was one of the first, I think it was the first world event of the entire game. It was the Ankaraj raid took place back in January 2006. It was a massive world event that crashed the servers of the game for several days. It basically took hundreds of players all cooperating at the same time. It was a big deal. But anyway, then there's Yogg Saron, who's kind of the big Mac Daddy of all the old gods. He is defeated in a level 80 raid dungeon that in Wrath of the Lich King. So the old gods are defeated. The Titans leave again. Everything's fine. Azeroth goes on as if nothing happened. The elemental lords are dispersed. Everything's returning to normal. Everything's fine. Obviously, there's a lot more to cover, and we'll cover all that in later videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, give me a subscribe, comment down below if you have any questions or comments, and we'll see you guys later. YouTube, have a great day.